Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Great Work Launchpad. My name is Kris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org. This is the Great Work Launchpad, episode 38. Shadow Work, part 36, Fear or Love, 21. And we're continuing with the Tree of Evil. This will be Tree of Evil, second iteration of the Tree of Evil. Continuing, probably ending it this evening. So the Great Work Launchpad is an effort to get people launched into doing the great work. As you can see from this image here, well, you are that rocket ship. You have to take in the truth. You have to be driven and motivated by the force of love, and then you work towards creating freedom in the world, creating true freedom. So each one of us needs to ignite ourselves into action in order to propel ourselves towards this common goal, this one great work that we all share, because we all have this purpose of restoring what was unrightfully taken from us as our birthright. And that is to be free, to not have our rights infringed, our natural rights violated. So in that effort, this is here to help people understand this whole process, understand themselves better. And that's why there's this ongoing series in shadow work, things related to shadow work, on working on yourself. And the last big chunk that we've been getting as a subset of shadow work is understanding how you are motivated by the force of fear or love. And we've gone into that quite a bit. So I'll get into some little promo for how to become the true media. So if you don't know how to do this work, you don't know how to get started, well, here's a course on learning how to use computers. Maybe you don't have computer skills, or how to publish things, or how to create a presentation, or do audio, things like that. Well, you can take this course and be guided along the way, or you can go figure it out on your own. There's tutorials and YouTube videos and a bunch of places you can go learn this from. So, there's nothing holding you back from learning it. So that's definitely not an excuse. We went through the excuses as part of this Motivations in Fear or Love series. So this is already ongoing, so you can't sign up this year, but you could go next year. And that's up to you if you feel so inclined to. And the point is to get the skills so you can pay the bills. All right. You're not going to be probably making any money, so not really to pay the bills. But get the skills so that you can get started and get involved in trying to create freedom for yourself. Well, trying to bring the conditions that would allow the requirement, that would allow freedom, true freedom, to be restored. And secondly, there is the Funnel 5, freedomundernaturallaw.com. February 21st, 22nd of this year. The Funnel 5 conference is titled Ignite Hearts and Minds. You can find a lot of information about that. Right now they have, they're putting out videos for the presenters. So you can take a look at all the presenters that are going to be coming up on their YouTube or Odyssey, I think, also there. So I'll check that out. So here we are, back to the content of the Tree of Evil. Oh, that's not where I need to go. I need to go here, here, here. I'll put it up here. Just need to bring it in. So we're talking about the Tree of Evil. And if anyone is familiar with Mark Passio's work, well, this is something that comes from Mark Passio's work. Oh, that's not the one. The Tree of Evil is a symbol an allegory and a symbol that he came up with to talk about some of the root causes for why we find ourselves in the condition of having evil present. And when we start at the top, we have the fruits of evil. So we went into this last week. The fruit of evil is what is produced from the tree. And you can't have fruit without leaves. You can't have leaves without branches. You can't have branches without a trunk. And you can't have a trunk without roots. Without roots, you can't have your plant. All plants grow from roots. So evil, we talked about, evil is a synonym for immorality, wrong, theft, violence, and slavery. That's the overall condition that we have right now as the condition of evil. And the condition of evil is created by evil behavior, and that's immoral behavior. So this is how evil becomes manifested in our world. So from those fruits, you have the leaves of ignorance. We went through that. And ultimately, it's willful ignorance of objective morality, of the difference between right and wrong. So you can have people who are supporting and condoning it because they're ignorant, or if they're not ignorant, then they just don't. They're not activated in themselves to retract themselves, to remove themselves from supporting it. And then you could have people who are enacting it. And they could be ignorant, and they could be knowledgeable, and they don't want to change. They know what they're doing. So that's the most evil. When you know what you're doing is evil, and you choose to continue doing it. So a lot of people don't want to face themselves and how they're creating it or how they're supporting it because of denial and rejection and refusal to admit the truth or receive the truth, and sometimes engaging in cognitive dissonance. And from those leaves of ignorance, well, why is someone ignorant? Why are they in this position of not having the knowledge? Why don't they want to know? And that comes down to responsibility, because they don't want the responsibility that comes with that knowledge. Because when you have knowledge, well, you can either use it or not use it. And usually knowledge that is worthwhile having is because it is knowledge that you can do something with, as opposed to knowledge that isn't very useful, that you're not going to be able to put it to much use in your life. So when you have knowledge that you can put to use and can empower you to act, well, are you going to act on that knowledge, or are you going to continue to ignore that responsibility? And then why are you ignoring that responsibility? Well, it comes down to a fear of that responsibility, because you do not want the responsibility to act upon that knowledge. With the whole understanding of natural law and our current condition, when you have the knowledge of objective morality, and you have the knowledge of the requirements of teaching objective morality, because that requirement is what will produce more morality, which will get us to the goal of true freedom, of not being enslaved. When you understand this, if you can understand it, then many people don't want to engage in the responsibility of ultimately the moral education, or all these peripherals like psychology and philosophy and shadow work, and getting people to that understanding and activating themselves into the great work. They just don't want to take on that responsibility. It's too much work. All the excuses we went through, they don't have enough time, they're not smart enough, they're not skilled enough, whatever reasons they come up with so that they don't have to start. Well, they don't want that responsibility. They don't want to have to act on that knowledge. So many people at a subconscious level, even though they haven't acquired the knowledge, speaking this knowledge, and then they can acquire it, and you can explain the purpose of what this knowledge is for, and the condition that we are in, and how to get out of that condition, this problem that we have, and the solution to the problem from a causal point of view, a causal factor, a root causal factor. They're not going to, they can hear what you're saying, but they're not going to want to accept the truth, the veracity of the conclusion being that the solution to the problem is moral education and doing this work. And, Passio has joked many times that people will hear what's required to actually get true freedom, and then they're like, all right, well, you have fun with that. I'm going this way, and you can keep doing that, and I'm going over here and just going to live my life. So that's what it ultimately comes down to at that level, is this fear of owning that personal responsibility in terms of getting true freedom for doing that great work. And even lower than that, the work on themselves of accepting right over wrong and choosing not to do right over wrong, taking ownership of their behavior and ownership of the choice of choosing one from the other. They don't want the responsibility to do that. They don't want to do that responsibility to stop supporting it. They don't want the responsibility to stop doing it themselves. And certainly, even if people do engage in those two different aspects, the third level of they don't want the responsibility to do something with what they know. They're like, okay, I can work on myself and stop doing it. I can stop supporting it. But, to get other people to do that, to explain all these things, these deep concepts, well, no, they're not interested in doing that work. And we've gone through this many times on this series as to how that is actually the solution. And without this moral education, you will never get true freedom, because the moral education is completely based upon, you're in the lobby. I'm here. I don't see you. Here, let me restart it. Okay, you'll rejoin. All right. Brandon Spencer's here. I was wondering where he was, but he's here. But I don't know. Problem on his side or on my side. We'll see if it works out. Yeah, so there we go. I guess there was a problem on his side with the Video Ninja. This little independent project that some guy made to enable us, give us the power to empower ourselves with this fancy interaction and video and voices and all this stuff without paying money for it or having a logo on our screen or reduced to 720p quality. Hey, Brandon, how's it going?
Hey, that was a weird little glitch.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen that one before. So good to have you here. Glad you're back. I was just going through a brief recap of the first two parts. I guess the first three: the fruit, the leaves, and the branches.
Oh yeah, I heard everything.
Okay, cool. Yeah, do you want to add anything to the recap before we move along?
Sure. First thing is my throat has been sore, sinuses. Just got back in town, so hopefully people can still understand me because I'm like clogged up with sinuses.
You got
But
some a Vegas virus?
yeah, whenever I go to Vegas and come back, man, it's like my sinuses
Dirty place over there.
always hit me. Yeah, like every time for 15 years straight, and I've done everything I could. Eat healthy, take vitamin C pills, drink clean water. But whenever I go to Vegas and I come back, man, it's like my sinuses just hit me. So it is what
That
it is to show
sucks.
must go on. But yeah, you know, being responsible for our actions, um, and people wanting to give that responsibility, to others. And we've talked about this so many, different times, and adults not wanting to bear that burden of responsibility, and the childlike mindset, and then they want others to be held responsible for them. So that's what how you were trying to point out. That's what I have been trying to point out. But sadly, in the year 2026, we still have too many adults who don't want to be responsible for the actions, don't want to be responsible for how they think, and they definitely don't want to be responsible when it comes to actual true knowledge when it comes to the evolution of mankind. So, sadly, we're just going to continue to suffer. And then when you try to point out these things, they're irresponsible, and this really shows because then you're the bad guy. So it
How
does really.
dare you sit on your moral high horse and think you're better than me for being a more moral person and actually getting involved in trying to end your enslavement and mine too. How dare you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like well, Passio's last season. Never gonna get it, never gonna get it, never gonna they're just never gonna get it.
Yeah. That's the way it seems,
Yeah.
sadly. But that means I'm never going to stop, speaking this.
Yeah.
So,
And yeah, talking about trying to get people to understand. I saw in your presenter interview, yeah, you mentioned that people are watching Funnel and they're not getting involved. I was like, yeah, you tell them. And thanks for mentioning the Great Work Launchpad. Appreciate the plug and your appreciation for what we're doing here, and also mentioning the work I've done.
oh
Thanks for
yeah,
that.
and I'm also going to have a part of that in my presentation, as far as, health solutions, if people want to get involved, because I understand the sacrifice. And I went and updated the playlist. You started this like 8 months ago. I'm like, damn, it's been that long. So, yeah.
Yeah, I saw you had uploaded. I know you uploaded a few of them, like 13 or something like that, and then you made the playlist on Odyssey. So yeah, thanks for that too. Appreciate it.
Hell, no problem. Hell, it's about making sure this knowledge is available for others. Because if it's not, then they're never going to come to understand, these moral truths. So at least if more people had the balls to even share and spread this knowledge, heavens forbid they, get involved. But people don't even want to, share, the videos and repost it, like onto their own channels.
Yeah, it definitely takes more of the content, the quantity, the majority. The more content that gets out there, the more potential exposure it has of reaching more people. And yeah, so that's why more people do need to get involved in creating their own content. It'll have like a different title, a different way of saying things, different ways of doing things, and potentially reaching more people. Because, I've been doing this for, not straight for 12 years, but 12 years, and, at the point where there's like maybe 20 views on the video. So it's like, doesn't go very far, but it's something out there. At least it's something that can be found, and maybe it won't be searchable because I don't know. I guess I got the keywords and I got stuff in there, but yeah, I don't know. I guess it's well, it's certainly not of interest, but it's out there for people if they ever get curious about things and type in shadow work or great work, and they might be able to find the content and then learn from it. So it's not a guarantee, but it's there.
If they care enough, they'll seek it out. They will find it if they care enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's just an example of, you do this work. It doesn't mean people are going to pay attention. Like I mentioned, it's gone down in numbers over the years. It's just gone to less and less. So either people care less, don't give a shit, even less than they did before, or there's like the algorithms and stuff doesn't work, and they're not showing it to as many people. But anyways, we go on. And so the next part, we left off with the fear of responsibility last week. And so after the fear of responsibility, you have to ask, we left off on it's children, because the fear of responsibility, who doesn't want responsibility? Children do actions, and oftentimes they'll be like, they don't want to be culpable for it. They don't want to take responsibility. So they'll say, no, I didn't do that, because they don't want to get in trouble. So who doesn't want responsibility for their action? It's children. So we're eternally children. We're not entering as passive in terms of cosmic adulthood. It's just adult bodies, but with unraised consciousness. The consciousness is not truly raised. And so people seek others to take on responsibility for them. Well, I don't want to take on the complexity of having to manage things and cooperate with other people to manage all of our lives together and co-create in a more voluntary and harmonious way. So you over there, we're going to vote for you, and you guys have a bunch of power that we don't have, and you're going to tell us what to do, what we can do and what we must do, and what we can't do. And that's going to work out great. There's going to be no problems with that. There's going to be no corruption, no abuse of power. And that's just because we want to be eternally children and not figure things out, not figure out a better way that we can do things together and unify. So we're just going to not take on that responsibility, not even try, and just pass it off to authority. We're going to create this authority that's just going to rule over us, because those are the parents. That's the mommy, the daddy, the nanny, and the political parties. And, well, I want mommy to do this, and, well, I want daddy to do that. And who's going to rule? I want mommy to rule me. I want daddy to take care of me. I want mommy to take care of me. And that's what people are doing in politics. They're just fighting over some other person that's going to take on things for them. And you mentioned Jesus and, the aliens and all this stuff. And people are just looking for external sources of saviors. People are going to save them because they view themselves as powerless. They can't save themselves. They can't be a part of a solution to save themselves and save others. They can't help themselves. They're powerless, and they can't do anything. The only thing they can do is just keep doing what they've already done. That's vote and engage in this system of belief where we're saying you guys have powers that no one else has, and you can do magical things that no one else can do, no one else has a right to do, but you can do it. And this is getting at self-loathing, because these people are unraised because they're children, and they view themselves as powerless, as helpless little infants that need parents to take care of them, to manage things for them, to manage their life, to tell them what to do and what not to do. And that's because they are unraised. And the reason that they're in this psychological state where they view themselves as helpless is because they're unraised. And that's the parental abandonment part there. I'm skipping ahead there, but they're in self-loathing. And we'll get to the parental abandonment, which is the reason for the self-loathing, because they don't have this self-respect. They don't know enough about themselves, of the power they have, not to snap of the finger and rewrite all of reality, but as an individual who is part of this co-creative, this web, this entangled web of all of us together who are creating this human way of life. And we've talked about this before, that you're not very powerful just by yourself, but you have an influence. Just as yourself, you can influence others. So you can't change things instantly in that sense of like an absolute power, but you have the power to be able to influence others. And this is because the self-loathing, this self-hatred, not loving themselves enough, to care enough to take on the responsibility and want to know objective morality, want to know things, want to know how to solve the problem of their own enslavement, want to know that they're even enslaved. This is the self-hatred and self-loathing, that they don't even care about themselves to even want to do that or act to bring forth a solution to that problem. And that's from lack of self-respect. Respect is to look at yourself again, because they have an undeveloped self-respect, undeveloped self-love, undeveloped self-care. And that self-care and that self-respect, that self-love and that self-care and care overall, the agape level, higher care, that comes from having that knowledge of yourself, the human being and consciousness and the powers we have, the power of consciousness. So they lack this knowledge, this self-knowledge. And their behavior demonstrates that they're not evolved in loving themselves, in, what did I write here? Okay, it's casing self. Okay, that's, caring about themselves. I have sloppy writing. Caring about themselves. They have some form of self-loathing or self-hatred that's present. Not like, oh, I walk around and every day I'm thinking about how much I hate myself. I'm a worthless piece of shit. That's not what we're talking about. Some people can be like that. But we're talking about how they have not developed this capacity of knowing truly who they are at a core level, even if it's being masked and suppressed. This capacity and this power of influence that you have through your consciousness, this magic of being able to, you're not physically interacting with someone, you're not doing anything to them, you're not like, healing a wound on their body with a band-aid or making the cut heal up like some magical power, but you're having this magical influence on them that's going to be taken internally, that's going to affect their mind, their mental state, and their emotional state, and then that will influence their behaviors, and that will change how they act in their life. And you're just speaking, and you can have that power over others. So these people who don't have the developed self-care and self-love, they're just accepting their own enslavement of not being free. And if you're accepting your own enslavement and not being free, then you don't truly love yourself. And so ultimately they think they're not worthy of freedom, that they're not valuable enough themselves as an individual to be worth the effort of fighting to restore that true freedom that was robbed from them and everyone else that came before them and everyone around them since the moment of their birth. It was robbed from you. So how can you say you love yourself if you don't even think yourself worthy enough and valuable enough to engage in the effort to try to restore that condition for yourself and for others, let alone caring for others truly, not at a deep level. You don't even care and love yourself at a deep level. So people accept slavery for themselves and for others. They don't have true care. They have this undeveloped self-love. They might love themselves in like maybe a more of a narcissistic type of way, but they don't have this true, deeper self-love. And, this is largely the order followers who are the enforcers of enslavement. They are big in the self-hatred because they can't even see what their behavior is truly doing. They're caught up in an illusion through following orders of, their parental figure telling them what to do. Oh, this is good and this is wrong, and you don't have to think about it and just do it. They're not even questioning things. They're stuck in this illusion, this false reality that they live in, thinking that they're part of something good and wonderful that's helping society and helping everyone around them. And not that they can't do good things to help people, but overall the structure of authority is there as a control over people to have rights and privileges that individuals don't have, but they magically have, or that individuals do have, yet deny them that right, like self-defense, so that they can be the only ones that are charged with the responsibility of defense. Hence, back to this fear of responsibility. Another part is people don't want that responsibility to even engage in their own self-defense, so they want, I want that mommy, daddy, nanny figure to protect me in this police force. Well, we can't not have police. What are you going to have instead? What are you going to replace the police with? And Paseo jokes, what are you going to replace the cancer with? Another form of cancer. So this is the type of men, they don't even understand that it's cancer. So there's so much ignorance, and this is, ultimately it's this lack of self-knowledge, this self-respect. They don't look at themselves. And this is what the great work is for, right? This is what we're doing here on this podcast, and other work that you can do, other work that individuals do, you can do in writing and other forms of media. The great work is ultimately to get others to engage in self-respect and develop self-respect and develop the self-love. And this is going to cure this aspect of self-loathing that they have. And, that's a tall task. So not only is it something that people don't even want to do when they hear the information, they don't want to do the work on themselves, but even many people who do end up doing the work on themselves do not want to engage in the responsibility of doing this work to influence others. And like I'm saying, it's not that you're guaranteed to influence others. Like I said, my view count is really low. I consider good quality information to help people, and a lot of it comes from Mark Passio, as I've stated many times. And it was stated, you got to be a broken record, and that's what the truth is there's a limited number of eternal truths, and so we all have to be broken records about this information and not get stuck on this fixation on novelty, on new things, because everyone's trying to be like, oh, well, someone already talked about it. I'm not going to talk about it. Oh, they already did it. They already did a better job. So I'm not going to bother talking about it. No, you have to talk about go through Passio's podcast. Every single thing he talked about, you can talk about too. You can write about it. You can do an audio. You can do a video. That's how much work that you can do without even actually researching any of it at the depth that Passio had to gain it and put it out there. You can just go repeat everything he said and maybe contemplate it more like I do and other people do, and then come up with new things. And that comes on part of your, the best way to know something is to teach it. So you become trying to teach it, and then you'll gain more aspects of it, and you can introduce more aspects into the work that maybe Passio didn't do. But there's plenty of stuff to get out there. If you haven't repeated every single thing that Passio has said in his podcasts, then I'm telling you right now that there's things that you can say that you haven't said yet, because you haven't repeated everything that he's said. So there's plenty of work that you can do. If you're thinking that there's no work to do, there's plenty of it out there. All right, I'll pass it to you, Brandon.
Hell, he even said that one time in a podcast. He was like, you can take everything that I say word for word and just put it in your own, video, put it in your own voice. Because people get caught up on the person who's saying it, and not the actual truth, how it's being spoken. So more emphasis to be put on the actual knowledge and truth that's being spoken, and not on, who's saying it. But to get back to the self, the trunk of self-loathing, if we talked about wanting to better one's existence. And in order to do that, you're going to have to look at your own self. Well, when you're in that state of self-loathing, you don't want to better any form of hell existence. You don't even want to, better yourself. So, you'll ignore the knowledge of morality. You'll ignore, hell, the self-knowledge. Because, hell, again, if you're not trying to better not just your existence, but the existence hell around you and that hell environment, then do you truly care? Do you truly have love? Because there are consequences and effects in reality. So if you were stuck in this state of self-loathing, the environment and others hell around you are also going to feel that self-loathing. That's why it's so important for the individual to look within themselves, come to understanding of themselves, take in these moral truths so they can better their existence and transmute this state of self-loathing into true self-care and true self-respect. And only until that's done, nothing in reality is going to change for the better. And that's the problem, is we have too many people who are just walking around in this state of self-loathing because they hate themselves. They don't really care if anything is better. It's almost like You know how the drug addict who's in a terrible condition, how everybody is around them is trying to inform them. It's like, hey man, you know how the conditions you are in, they're not capable of thriving. You know how you yourself, how you it's like you are slowly deteriorating away. And the individual just doesn't care because they truly hate themselves to where it's like, well, if I die, if something happens to me, I don't care. And sadly, that's almost like the same state that people are in is we are being enslaved, and you can break it down to them and they will admit it and they still do not care. So it's like, okay, you have admitted that you were enslaved, but you're not going to do anything about it. What better definition of being a self-loathing and self-hatred can you be in? And I've actually had this conversation with people. They'll admit to, yes, we are all enslaved. So then it's like, well, okay, since we recognize the problem, what are we going to do as far as, trying to get out of it? And it's like, well, screw that. It's like, really? And like, that's the mentality that we're dealing with. That's the conditioning that needs to be broken because sadly, most people are broken. Because to be in a state of self-loathing means you are broken. You are damaged. You are a damaged individual. You have a damaged psyche. You have a you have a you have a damaged worldview. And that's the whole point of healing. That's the whole point of putting things back together. That's the whole point of truth being the true her religion, if you understand, binding, connecting and healing back together, not the connotation, as far as, how Christianity and all the other, how mainstream, religions. It's the healing aspect that comes once you recognize you have been separated and you have been broken. Well, then what are you going to do to put the pieces back together and to heal yourself? That's where the self-care and the self-knowledge and the knowledge of moral truths come in.
Right on. Yeah. That's a good mention about being broken. Because, a lot of people, well, I don't know how many people, I'll say some people have this notion that I think still now, and it was popularized, I think, by Descartes, that non-human animals are more like machines. They don't have consciousness or spirit or will. They don't have will. But they do have will. Animals do have will. It's just reduced. It's, Darwin referred to it as the animal kingdom is similar in kind but different in degree. So this, you can apply it to consciousness and will. They have consciousness or soul or spirit, or call it different terms, and maybe you'll have different definitions for your terms, but I'll just refer to it as consciousness and will. The point that I'm getting at, that it's similar in kind. So the kind is, well, there's a consciousness, but it's in different degrees, and we have the highest, and then they have less. So they have less will. They have less ability to apply will in that creative capacity, because that's the point of will. The will is what actualizes your behavior. So you will something, and you will your behavior into manifestation, and then, well, something happens with it in reality. It affects reality in some way. And we have that greatest capacity, that creative capacity to affect and influence reality. And they have it to less of a degree. And people in the animal exploitation modality throughout human history, well, they understand this, because you have horses who have free wills, and they are roaming wild and free, and then you can put a rope around and pull them, and then you got to break them in order for them to be subservient to you, to allow their will to be subsumed by your will going above them. So their will, they let go, and they learn to be helpless, that they are imprisoned and enslaved, and they're not getting out of it, because there's this superior being who's manipulating them and can orchestrate situations where they will either be punished or not be able to be free. So then they just give up, and that's learning to be helpless. So that's where breaking the will, it's popular in that aspect because they have free will. And then when you break the will, it's that a being who was embodying a capacity of freedom to whatever extent they are capable of, and their free will was being applied, even whether they're cognizant of this notion of will or the degree to which they're applying it doesn't matter. But those who can recognize it can see, well, there was this degree of free will being applied, and then you steal that from them, you rob it from them, and so you break them. And the breaking them is when you see that the will that they have, they've subsumed it and allowed another being to go on top of their will. So now it's the master. Well, he's going to tell me what to do. He's going to ride me. He's going to tell me to go faster. He's going to tell me to slow down and all this stuff. And that's the breaking of the will. And that's what humanity has become, is we're all broken into the subservience to authority.
Domesticated.
Yeah, we've been domesticated.
And good points you made. They actually did that to physical strong slaves who disobeyed. You know how once their new stock of slaves would come in, a lot of the newer like newer, more in shape slaves didn't adapt as well, and they were less obedient, and they were more prone to fight back. Well, they would use techniques, hell abuse, hell manipulation, fear, and violence to break the will. And this has been displayed in so many, different movies. So yeah, how the same, like the same way, how they did with horses and all kinds of animals, they actually used similar techniques on actual physical slaves to break the will.
Yeah, there's so many similarities of different species of the animal kingdom, and some are more similar to others than others that are more different. And yeah, we have a lot of similarities with many of the ones we keep around us, dogs and cats and the horses and stuff. And we mentioned it, I think maybe it was 2 podcasts ago, that a person has a personality. So anything that has a personality is also a person. And that goes down to chickens. They all have different personalities. People who interact with them can see that there's different personalities. They behave in different ways. And so all animals have this capacity of this individuality. They are all individuals because they all have this unique behavioral choice that they exemplify. They don't engage in the same choices of behaviors. It's not all automatic. It's not all instinctual. There are choices made. There are personality quirks and traits for how they go about the form of existence that they have at the level of consciousness that they have. And it's just really interesting how we can deny them the understanding, like overall humanity is denying them these faculties that we have, just that we have a higher degree, a higher amplitude, I guess you could say, of this potential or this power within us, or this faculty of consciousness or will. And just because it's not at the same, and we don't exemplify the same, they don't have the same behavioral outputs, like for instance language and speech, that then they don't deserve treatment on par with us as we treat others. And a lot of that comes from the whole aspect of the reciprocity and the repercussions and the feedback that can be experienced by one who is stealing the will and stealing the property of another, because they are a lesser degree of power compared to us and our cunningness. So even when it comes to predators, like one-on-one, go up against a grizzly bear and try to take something from them, probably won't end up good. But we got guns. We got ropes. You can have like 10 people all tie ropes around them, peg them down, and then they're not going to be able to move. There's like so many ways. Our ingenuity and our capacity to imagine different inventions and create them and to solve problems, and whether those problems are moral or not. The problem of wanting to subdue another and make them subservient to you, that is not a moral problem. That doesn't have a moral solution to that problem that you envisage as something that you want to accomplish. This goal, this end, is a problem for you, but it's not an immoral problem that requires a moral solution. It's something that's already, I guess, like a moral state, or amoral from the animal's perspective, since they can't have the understanding of morality or immorality. But then you're trying to impose an immoral solution in order to get what you want out of it. So that's the whole exploitation. And there was a point I was trying to make with this, and I think it slipped my mind. But yeah.
You would think that with such great capacity that we have, and this is what, I've talked about and what you talked about, that we would hold ourselves to a certain,
Higher, yeah.
Yes, a responsibility, because we have this capacity to understand these things. And with that level of complexity comes more responsibility. And sadly, that is not the case. That is not the case. And it's really sad, because that's what an intelligent, individual would do, is you would hold yourself to more hell accountability and responsibility. But sadly, hell, just bring up the whole tree of evil,
Yeah. Yeah, so I remember what I was saying, that we come up with these ideas of, here's a problem of something I want, and then I just want to take, and we come up with technology and devise ways of taking things from others that we don't have a right to take, and making them subservient to us. And we have this great creative power, and this is how we've created the condition that we have of authority. People have devised this as a way, whatever way it originated. You could come up with ideas of, people cleverly thought of ways that, I want this in life, and I don't want to have to work for this and do this, so I'm going to convince people that they need me. And Passio's gone through this in his earlier podcast, talking about the Federal Reserve and comparing it to psychopathy, and how the psychopath will convince you that they are necessary for your own well-being, and that without them, it would just be chaos and you would be worse off. And this is what they have done with humanity. The predator mindset, the larger satanic ego has given a mini-me satanic egotism to people. They've sold their mindset in a diluted form, the satanic mindset in a diluted form, for people to accept aspects of the larger agenda. So the psychopathic predatory mindset has been sold to people as being necessary for their own survival, because without it, then things would just decay and completely be dissolved, and then it would just be warlords, or you'd just be enslaved in the markets, and just powerful people would be. And yeah, maybe that would happen, but at least there wouldn't be this facade of selling people on how good it is without actually seeing it, realizing the real lies of this system that we live in, of this way of life, and not actually looking at it honestly. And a large part of them not wanting to engage in moral education is just for that, so that you don't see government for what it is. I think I mentioned that I released the Law of Freedom Part 8 on Monday on Chaos and Order, and I mentioned that is that government doesn't want moral education. That's why there is no actual true moral education. This stuff it's occulted, but now there's a lot of people who are talking about it, and it can be known, and it was probably known for a long time, and there's probably people who have known about it and wanted it to remain suppressed. And so how long is it going to take before moral education ends up in public schools? Oh, well, I'd say never. Never in a public school, because the public school is funded by government, so they're never going to want people to understand how the government is evil, because then the people who work in government, well, that would jeopardize their parasitic survival. So that's how they've convinced people is, I'm royalty, and without me, the parasite, the psychopath, your society would just decay. So even if you view me as a tyrant, well, you better have some other royal, some benevolent ruler come in and continue to be a child forever and ever and ever, because you gotta, I'm gonna protect you with my soldiers, and so that means we need money. I gotta tax you. I gotta take some of your food. You gotta pay tribute, so that, well, I can live. I'm the manager. I need a way to live too. I gotta live in this nice castle with all this food and all these manicures and being given baths and all this luxurious way of life, because I can't do any of that for myself. Well, I could, but it's more work, so I'm just going to devise a clever system of authority, or adopt it, in order for me to exploit you so that you do all the hard work, and I just live off the fruits of your labor and the spoils of what you've produced, so that I can have an easier life. And I'm just going to sell you on this benefit of you getting something out of it, and not just me just robbing you outright. And that's what we have. And so there is some truth of, like, yes, you get a benefit out of it, but you do not have the voluntary choice to opt out. And that's what the government has, is a bunch of services where they're like, okay, we're giving you this service, so we need money for it. And you're like, well, what if I don't want the service? Well, too bad. You can't opt out. And that's the monopoly on all these services. Whether it's in a country like mine with medical services, well, you don't have to go there. You could go to a private one, but you don't have a choice on paying for the public health, or paying for this, or paying for that, or paying for this. Like, I don't want an army. I don't want you to go to war. Well, you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice on all these different things, and we're just going to take the money from you, and you can't opt out. So there's no voluntary funding of these services.
Chris, I have a question. How was that any different than a gang, or the mafia, or the Yakuza, like, or the cartel? Like, it's like, how was it any different?
Yeah, it's just the perception is what the difference is. Is that, well, these guys aren't that street gang. These guys they dress nicely, and they have nice words, and they make nice promises, and they look out for the public good, and they protect us from foreign invaders, and they clean this. They pay people. Well, our money goes to cleaning the streets, and our money goes to snowplows, and our money goes to garbage collection. Our money goes to keeping society in order, because without them forcing us to get their service, well, it's not like we could pay someone else to do that service. No, it's impossible. We have to have the centralized authority, and then there's no improvements, because without the consequence of a retraction of the money for a failure to do a job right, there are no consequences. So then they can just keep doing a shit job forever, because there's no consequences in that true market of, well, you're going to do something for me, okay, you want something in return, well, here. So you could do that in many different ways. But if there's no way to, like, signal, like, okay, well, you suck, and you're not going to be paid, so then change your ways if you want to get customers back, or else well, you're going to go out of business. So that's one way that this medium of exchange facilitates an improvement of services and goods that people can provide for each other. There's probably other ways of the feedback. You could have a reputation system and things like that, where people just give their reviews and things, and like a Trustpilot score. And then, well, you go look at the score. What's this company? What's this person? Oh, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I don't want to buy from you. I'll get all these examples of just how shitty your product is. I'll go to someone else. The government, you can't do that.
Correct. Yep. because they know they're going to get paid every time, because it's based off stolen money, you know. And people always ask, well, like, how will it work without the government? Hell, just like Chris said, you can have a review system. And if you put out a shit product, then you will get negative reviews. Then you would just go out of business because you created shit and people wouldn't want your shit. But sadly, hell, we don't have that because the government just creates more shit and people just line up and they want more and more shit. So that's all they've ever known. That's all they've ever tasted. That's all they've ever smelt, and they don't know anything outside of the shit that's been given to them.
Yeah. And how do you do it a different way? Well, it's like you could take garbage collection and, well, you hire a company. And if people don't pay that company or different, maybe there could be 3 companies. I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then it's like, okay, well, we're going to do these addresses here in this area. And if someone's not paying, well, the driver knows, well, you don't pick up at this address. And then
Yep.
what do they do with the garbage? Well, who knows? And then if they just dump it in the street and cars are driving over it, well, then everyone goes and pays them a visit. And hey, you deal with your trash yourself, or you pay for a service to come export that entropy somewhere else. Since we're all agreeing that we're living in a society with trash, so we're all going to agree with it, whether it's moral or not. Whatever the majority accepts is what's going to happen. So there's better ways of doing things. Plastic sucks. Anyways, that's a more deeper topic, but you can agree that whether this is good or bad, we're agreeing to do it this way. And if you're going to contribute even more disorder to what is already the waste that we produce and putting it somewhere so that, it's just in one area as opposed to everywhere. If you're just going to be spreading your shit everywhere, well, we're not going to put up with that. And you're going to face consequences, and people can go do that together. And you can argue whether it's moral or not. It would be moral, but once again, the only thing that matters is how many people are doing something, whether it gets done or not. So it could be something moral or it could be something immoral. And enforcing a way of life can be done in a moral way to get people to do it the moral way. And it takes people united to enforce that. Or you can have people united in a belief system of authority to enforce an immoral way of life, which is what we have. So if you don't want to pay your taxes, or you'd prefer to engage in a private garbage collection and private snow removal for the roads and private road building, you can't. And they want your money. They want to take it from you so that they can be the one who has the monopoly to do it, and do it poorly. Like, there's so much poor. Like, ever go through, like, frequent a road, and then you see there's like construction, they're like repairing the road, and then you come back, and after it's repaired, it's like such a shitty job. And it's like, you were paid to repair the road and fix a problem that was there, not to do a half-ass job and just leave it with, like, a speed bump on a road going like 60 miles an hour. And it used to be flat, and because you repaved a chunk of it, well, now there's like this big speed bump when you're driving on it. Like, that's a degradation. Okay, you might have fixed some like holes and some cracks and stuff, but now when you're driving and your car goes boom when you're driving on the road, like, that's not an improvement. Or if, like, it's not even flat the whole way and it just goes in, you put the pavement, but then it's sunk in, so then you got like another speed bump. Like, do your job properly. Like, what is wrong with you? How is it so hard to like level it out? Or if there's going to be sinkage, then you put extra so that when it dries and sinks, well, then it's going to be level. And it's like, there's just so much incompetence. And this is how government operates, is that there's none of that feedback. There's no consequence for when you do something bad. Is the consequences, people don't want your service because it's shit, and they don't want to pay for your shit service. So they're going to go find someone else, or someone else can start a way to provide that service and offer to do it better. And maybe they will, maybe they won't, but that's to be seen. But at least you don't have to be stuck paying for the one that you already know is crap. Anyways.
Hell, don't ever come to the South and drive through Louisiana and Alabama. They have some of the shittiest roads, dude.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, especially certain spots in Louisiana.
those backcountry, I guess backcountry roads that don't get much funding, I guess, and the roads just deteriorate.
The money always goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, paying for things
else.
to get done that don't get done. Yeah. There you go.
Yep.
So next week we'll talk about we'll get into parental abandonment, and I don't know if it'll take up a whole episode, but we'll see. And I think after that we'll get into the fear of sacrifice content that Passio's put out, continuing on into this fear or love series of what motivates you, and that's definitely a big one. In the fear is what motivates you. When you really understand how you're behaving and why you're not doing it, well, that's part of that fear, the aversion. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for being here, Brandon. Appreciate you coming by. I don't know what happened at the beginning there. And I'll try to check the chats more frequently. But yeah, when I don't see someone, I don't think that there's anyone there. But now that I know the bugs there, I'll know that it's possible that someone shows up and they're in the chat, but they're not there, and they don't show up as a person in the video ninja thing. Cool. All right. Well, have a good night. Take care. Oh, wait. In the immortal words of Mark Passio, we have a closing little speech from the one, the only, Mark Passio.
Out there and do the actual...
Every time it screws up.
How about trying to get out there and do the actual great work so this world isn't such a fucking hellhole, huh? How about trying to get out there and do the actual great work so this world isn't such a fucking hellhole, huh?
Huh? How about it?
Yep.
All right. Have a good one. Take care.